88.3 WXOU, Auburn Hills, Michigan. We're live from the basement of the Oakland Center. It's Sports Talk with Austin Puckett. That's myself and my friend here, Tim Pontzer.
How you doing, man?
I'm doing good. Pretty excited to talk about a little Oakland basketball today.
I'm not excited to talk about Oakland basketball.
Well, we're not excited about the game, but we're going to talk about it anyway. We're going to wrap up the Big Ten season, get into the Big Ten tournament, and then obviously we're going to get into the NFL free agency that opened up a couple days ago, and we're pretty excited to talk about it. So it's going to be a good time, and we're just going to dive right into the topic. Oakland on a few days ago, they lost to Fort Wayne 91-72 in the first round of the Summit League tournament. Bader had 18 points. Petros had 0. Ryan Bass had 16. Not a great performance from Oakland. Anytime you go into a tournament game where you're expecting to advance and move on and challenge for to make the NCAA tournament, win the whole thing, and go to the NCAA tournament, I know that's what Coach Campy expects, and they didn't get it done. So, Tim, your thoughts?
Well, obviously, they didn't get it done. You look at some of the stats. All you have to look at right here is the shooting percentage. Oakland shot at 35.5%, and IPFW matched that with a 62.5%. And at the beginning of the game, IPFW hit like 8 out of their 9 first three-pointers, and they just were a hot team. And you run into that in conference tournaments, in the big tournament, where a team that they're going to shoot really well, and that's I don't expect IPFW to and they didn't later on match that. They didn't win their next game.
Second half was much weaker than the first.
Well, no, I mean in the game after they beat Oakland. You run into that in the tournament where a team will just shoot really well, but at the same time, Oakland, they didn't show up to play, especially at the beginning. And it's one thing, the team has a really hot start, but and that obviously played a part of it, but Oakland just didn't. You look at Petros down low, 0 points. That's completely unacceptable. Campy had some very colorful things to say after the game. He was extremely disappointed. To be beat by a team 3 times in a row is just...
In 4 games.
Yeah, it's just not... It's not Campy's way of doing things around here. And it's the first time in 5 years they haven't won 20 games. It's the first time they... in 4 years they're not going to be playing in a tournament of some sort. And it's just really disappointing, 16-16 on the year. And sure, maybe if they scheduled some easier opponents early on, they might have had maybe at that 21 season. But there's not looking back, there's very few things to hang their hat on. Looking back on the season,
probably your best thing is a loss to Pitt in overtime.
Yeah, that's definitely one, and even then, that's a really tough pill to swallow when you had a double-digit lead, like a 16-point lead.
They kind of choked that one away too. But
you had Bader, and Bader had a great year until the end in these past couple games. And he led the nation in threes. Duke Mondi played really well on the defensive side of the ball, but he was really hyped up to be the point guard of the team and. To replace Reggie Hamilton, which were big shoes to fill, and he led the nation in steals, but he just didn't down the stretch. He got benched. He came off the bench, and they had a good run there, but it's a shame. But going forward now, the only guy you're losing is Drew Valentine, and Drew Valentine he's I wrote a blog post, and I said he was like the heart of the team, which is unquestioned. I think he's the unquestioned leader. Plays through pain, and he didn't have his best year, but he was. You could definitely see that he was not at 100% anywhere near that. You're bringing some guys back. They have some guys coming in. Hopefully, some of these younger guys is what I really think needs to happen. They need to step up, because when you only had 5 to 6 guys playing in your rotation, 7 at the most. It's tough to win games that way, and it's tough to beat those bigger teams that you're going to try and match up against.
Yeah, just some raw stats from the game versus Fort Wayne. Drew Valentine, that Tim was talking about, had 10 points. Mm-hmm. Dante Williams contributed 14. Mondi had 7. Mm-hmm. Bader with 18. Bass with 16. Bader was 4 of 16 from the floor, 3 of 12 from 3. 7 of 10 from the free throw line. Yeah. Not a great performance from him. Yes, he ended up with 18 points, 7 of which came from free throws. So
right, he got to the line a lot.
You're only getting 11 points from field goals.
Right. You saw me. He was driving. We were watching the game at your house, and he can drive. That's the thing about him. He's known as a shooter, but he can. I mean, he can make some nice moves to the basket.
He can put the ball on the floor a little bit, but for Fort Wayne, Frank Gaines had 23 points, which is to be expected. He's a good player.
He's the best.
Lewis Jacob, 18 points, 12 rebounds, so a double-double for him. And then this Michael Kibalowski guy, 15 points for him.
Who they shut down in the last game against Oakland. And they did the same thing against Frank Gaines in the first half at the game at Oakland on senior night, but then he finished with 16 points in the second half and really keyed them to the victory. I didn't expect it to be so, such a gap, 91-72. I mean, I had predicted that Oakland was going to win 77-68 because both the games had really been, they hadn't been as much of an offensive track meet as you see with Oakland, some of those games. And they're scoring under 80. That's, somebody said it's not a Big Ten tournament game where it's, 51-49. It's a Summit League game.
But regardless, you can't give up 91 points.
Oh, no, you can't. Absolutely. Oh,
I mean, the defense was not there.
Right.
The offense was not really great either. I mean, granted, IPFW shoots 62.5% from the floor, which is outstanding, and OU only shoots 35.5%.
Right.
And from three, OU shoots 25%, and IPFW shoots 60%.
Exactly. I mean, and is it kind of a fluke? I mean, it is, and
I would say it's a fluke for the margin of victory. But I mean, IPFW beats you 3 times in 4 games. You can't say anything but they're the better team.
Right. Oh, absolutely. And that's what Campy said, and he said that before the game when they were going into it. He said you can't see how we can think they're a better team. And they had a week to prepare, and they said they had some things up their sleeve that they hadn't shown in the 2 games previous. And I mean, it didn't.
They showed some new bricks.
Yeah, they showed, and I don't know. It just. And it was really strange watching that game. I know I was over at your house, and some of the people we had over there, they just kind of like weren't paying attention because it wasn't that great of a game, especially from Oakland's standpoint. But I sat there, true fan, sat there and watched all 40 minutes, and it was strange because Oakland would like come back and make it within like 8, and it was not like. It was a blowout, but it felt like a blowout. But then you look at the scoreboard and you'd be like, they're only down by 8. They're only and they would hold Fort Wayne to these stretches of like 5-6 minutes of regulation where they just didn't score. And Oakland would like come back, but then Oakland would miss easy layups, try too many threes, and then all of a sudden IPFW hits like 3 threes in a row, and it's back to a 12-15 point margin.
Yeah,
it was a really
like you said,
strange game. The 2 biggest things for me are the shooting percentage. Especially from 3-point line, but just overall, when you basically double your opponent's shooting percentage, you're going to win the game. And Petros having 0 points, I didn't know that. That's a good job by you, but it's kind of an obvious thing when you see a goose egg next to your center.
Yeah, you can't have 0 points from any starter on the floor.
Oh, absolutely.
I mean, if he's going to play starter minutes, then he needs to produce a little bit.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, it was a disappointing game for Oakland, and really it's been a disappointing season for Oakland. You only end up with 15 games, or 15 wins. 16 wins. 16. And first round exit in the Summit League tournament
for the second year in a row.
Right, and it's just a disappointing thing. And I wanted to point out that some of the stars for Oakland didn't show up, much like last year when Reggie kind of choked a little.
Well, Reggie, I mean, and I know you always point that out, but Reggie, he had a great game up until that point. He would score 30 points with his eyes closed. Every game last year was phenomenal. But he was the offense. I mean, he'd take all their shots and drive. He was really fun to watch. And he did that, and then he just missed free throws at the end. That game was completely different than this one, where Oakland had control of that game all the way until the end. And then they gave it away at the end. And you put Reggie on the line, and he was like a 98% free throw shooter. This time around, you play a team in Fort Wayne that is better you twice, but both times single digits, and Fort Wayne just comes out shooting, hitting all their shots, and Oakland can't match it, and they really can't match it anything defensively. I mean, it was 5 minutes in, it was like 32-10. It was crazy. It was like, what is going on? It's just I had made some predictions. I said the 3 guys that I thought needed to step up for Oakland were Valentine, Mondi, and Bader. And Valentine, I mean, he kind of gave you what you expect. I said I'd expect like 14 and 6, and he gives you 10 and 8. And then Duke Mondi, I thought he'd give you 8 points and 6 assists. And he had 7 points, but he really was a non-factor in that game. He came in, he had some early fouls. And then obviously Bader was the guy who was a combined going into the game. While he led the nation with 131 threes, he was a combined 3 for 21 from beyond the arc against Fort Wayne. And they seemed to he'd have fits against him, even with open looks. And obviously, going 3 for 12 on Sunday night, he's a guy that they needed. He gives you 18 points. He's going to give you double digits every night. But you'd like to see that 18 points double. And I know that's asking a lot, but you want to see him. He is their main focal point of their offense, and he just didn't. He wasn't able to hit his shots. But like I said, going forward, only losing Valentine, maybe they can build on that.
It was a disappointing game for Oakland, and they're going to have to move on. And much like Oakland, we're going to move on now to Big Ten regular season wrap-up. We're going to get into that with about Michigan State, Michigan, Ohio State, Wisconsin. They all tie for the Big Ten title in the regular. Indiana beats Michigan, and Indiana edges out Michigan on Sunday and moves on to win the Big Ten. Wins the Big Ten outright. Michigan State finishes in second place with tied with Ohio State, and Wisconsin gets that third spot tied with the fourth spot tied with Michigan. So Indiana wins it with a 14-4 conference record, 26-5 overall. Michigan State and Ohio State both finish with 13-5 in the conference, and then Wisconsin and Michigan are 12-6 in the conference for the regular season. Actually, Wisconsin edges out Michigan in a tiebreaker and takes the 4th seed in the Big Ten tournament, and Michigan, with one loss, drops from a first-place team to a 5th-place team, and now they're playing in the first round of the Big Ten tournament as we speak, actually. So what did you think about the overall Big Ten season, Tim?
Overall season, I in question, they're the best conference in the nation. You had some teams early on, like Michigan, that really jumped out, obviously number 1 team, and you had some teams like State that were not thought of to do as much, this season, and then they really surprised some people. I would put kind of Wisconsin in the same boat. They didn't finish as strong, but they really had a pretty solid season when some people, wouldn't have put them as high as they finished. And then obviously Indiana was the best. They were, they deserved the Big Ten title, by all of themselves, and that's what they got. And they were able to beat teams on the road, which other teams in the conference weren't able to do.
Right. They went into East Lansing and won. They went into Ann Arbor and won. They went into Columbus and won. So the 3 teams behind them, they beat them. And Wisconsin actually went into Indiana and beat them. But regardless, Indiana showed that road powerhouse that not a lot of the other teams could do. And that's how they won the Big Ten outright. So, it's great for the Hoosiers. And so I know even the Spartans were disappointed in the Wolverines' loss on Sunday, because that would have gotten a share for the Spartans, because they defeated the Northwestern Wildcats, and would have gotten a share for the Buckeyes as well, as they defeated Illinois.
And it was a great game. I know you didn't get a chance to watch it live, but I turned it on with about a few minutes left. I had it on, and I wasn't paying close attention to it, and then looked at the end, and it was a great game. But Michigan absolutely they choked the game away. It's unbelievable. They missed 3 of the last 4 free throws at the end, and Indiana went from being down by 4 or 5 with less than a minute left, like 45 seconds left, and then they won by a point. And Jordan Morgan almost gets the ball to get off the rebound after Trey Burke almost makes a layup, and the ball kind of sat there and fell off. And that was, Michigan went from getting the first round bye to having to go play Penn State. And Indiana got the title. It all rested on there. It was a great finish, but Michigan just absolutely couldn't finish out the game. And Indiana's done that to other teams this season. But Michigan, if I'm a Michigan fan going into the season, going into the big tournament, there's a couple games where you played some above average teams, which are obviously going to be playing above average teams in the tournament, and you didn't quite finish games. Sure, they were able to beat some teams, but you couldn't finish even at Penn State. You couldn't finish to Wisconsin.
Nope.
Ohio State, and now Indiana. The one game they were able to finish was at home against the Spartans. They were able to pull out that close victory, but A 1-point loss. It's a respectable loss, but at the same time, it leaves you wanting more if you're that Michigan fan.
Well, it's respectable in the sense that Indiana is a great ball club, but it's not respectable in the sense that you have a chance to once again control your own destiny and get a share of the Big Ten title, and you choke, just like you did at Penn State. And you know what? It's just not acceptable.
And something that would bother me as a Michigan fan. I'm sorry, I'm not a Michigan fan. I just want to put that out there. But if I'm a Michigan fan. What will bother me is the lack of depth on your team. Where you look at the box score, they had 4 of their 5 starters were in double figures against Indiana, and then they had a grand total of 7 bench points. They've got this guy named Spike Albrecht, who I don't even know who that is, and then I know about Mitch McGarry, and they got Horford and Levert, but they weren't able to score any points while. Indiana had 15 bench points, and they were able to get some scoring. When you go into the tournament, you have to keep a close rotation, but you kind of hope that you can get something off the bench, some sort of spark, some sort of energy. But the biggest thing, obviously depth, like I said before, is just not being able to finish, and especially hitting the free throws. I mean, that's what it comes down to, Mario. You see these in these conference tournaments. You see it all the time when a team can't hit free throws. I mean, that's what it takes to seal the game. You basically have won the game. Now you just got to cap it off, especially at home. I mean, the pressure's there, but you put your best guys out there. You put Hardaway, you put Burke, and they all missed them. And one of my favorite, they call them the Campyisms. He said, Coach Campy said that there's 2 things that won't stay alive, and that's dogs that chase cars and teams that miss free throws. And that's you're not gonna win ball games if you can't finish out a game.
The one thing I wanted to point out is for the top 5 teams in the conference, those being Indiana, Michigan State, Ohio State, Wisconsin, Michigan. I was looking last night at their schedules, and I just wanted to point out that going into this big tournament, as highly touted as the Big Ten has been this year, at the end of the season, 4 of the 5 teams have kind of fizzled out a little bit, and that's probably partially due to the rigors of the Big Ten season. I think that probably plays a big factor, especially because a lot of these teams have played each other.
Exactly.
So, I mean, that's definitely a factor in it. But, it's not the vote of confidence that you want going into a big tournament like what's coming up. And, March is when it really counts. And those are Indiana is 2-2 in their last 4 games. Not great. Michigan State's 2-3 in their last 5 games. Also not great. And that's with 3 losses in a row and then 2 wins at home, which is a nice, ending 2-0 at your last 2 games, but not great. Ohio State is 5-0 in their last 5 games.
Right,
they're on the upswing right now.
Yeah.
And, that, for a Buckeye fan, that should give them confidence.
Following that, it was that close loss to Michigan, and then after that, they won out.
5-0. Wisconsin's 4-3 in their last 7 games. I mean, you're over 500, but not great. And Michigan started 20-1,
right. Number 1 team,
and in their last 10 games went 5-5.
Right.
It's in a single game you can't cap it off, and it's like in the whole season you can't cap it off.
Right.
Now that can all change if you make a run in the tournament, but you go 5-5 in your last 10 games, and you're not really on the upswing going into the tournament, which a lot of times is really important. You can have the doldrums of late February or even early February, and that's all right, but you've got to be on the upswing going into that tournament, and we'll see if they can turn it around in the Big Ten tournament and get it going for March.
Speaking of the Big Ten tournament, we have a final. Just one final. It was Michigan knocked off Penn State 83-66. And while that, it's good for the Wolverines, obviously. At halftime, it was 35-33. Michigan. And Michigan started off the game. They let Penn State score the first 12 points of the game, and they were down 15-3 to start the game. We talk about not being able to finish, but we've seen some games, like the game at Penn State, where they're not able to start games either. And if you dig yourself a hole against a team in the in the big tournament, it'd be really tough to battle back against some higher competition than Penn State. I mean, you got to give Penn State credit. It was 50-45 in the second half with 13 minutes left, and then Michigan kind of pulls away. Trey Burke gives you 21 points, which he's expected to give you 20 points a game, but that it's not the best showing for the Wolverines.
It's not. I mean, it's an expected victory, so not with this breaking news, we'll move on to the Big Ten tournament. Illinois won earlier, so they're going to play Indiana
on a buzzer beater
in the second round. Yep.
Gus Johnson went crazy. It was awesome.
Yeah. Michigan, obviously, they just beat Penn State, so they'll go on to play Wisconsin. And then coming up next on the floor in the United Center is going to be Iowa and Northwestern, and then the winner of that game is going to play Michigan State. And then after that, at the 9 o'clock tip, Purdue and Nebraska are playing, and whoever wins that game goes on to play Ohio State. So, like we said before, the top 4 seeds there. Michigan recovers and defeats Penn State to go on to play Wisconsin. That should be a gritty game, I'd say.
If you're Michigan, it's a good thing you didn't lose, because if you would have lost Penn State, I mean, I hate to say it, you definitely would be getting a lower 2 seed. If you might even be falling further.
I would say like a 5 seed.
Well, you get like the people for a team that was a number 1 team in the nation a month ago. Now you're going to be a 3, maybe a 4 seed if you would have lost that game.
Yeah, I would say with this victory you secure maybe the top 4 seed.
I think a little higher than that, especially when they're in the top 10 in the
it all depends on what other teams do.
It does.
But, I mean, for Michigan, this is one thing that I wanted to say, is for Michigan to be the 5th team in the Big Ten and be the 6th team in the country makes no sense. The rankings, they don't really matter, but it is like, what does that even mean? Like, I mean, if that's the case, then how is, Michigan State and Ohio State and Wisconsin not 2, 3, 4, Like, that really doesn't make sense.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's that is kind of funny. You don't see that as much in a football conference.
No.
But basketball, it is a little different. And I think your point about all the teams, you can say, oh, well, teams go 2-2 or 3-2 and their last couple games don't finish as strong. It's because all those teams were pointing out they were playing each other. And that kind of hurt the Big Ten in a sense that you didn't have certain teams. Like if Michigan State would have finished with Northwestern, Penn State, and Illinois, and Indiana kind of faced the same kind of schedule, and they didn't really play each other, you'd have some teams that would have finished with only 2 or 3 wins on the year. And I understand they would have had to play each other, but theoretically, if that would have happened, if you had some teams kind of run away with it, maybe 2 or even 3 teams in the Big Ten, you'd be looking at teams like maybe you get 2 1 seeds and a high 2.
Right.
But because of that, Indiana is theoretically, and I believe, probably going to be the only team from the Big Ten to get that number 1 seed. When a month ago, before all that kind of got clogged at the end, everybody was like, hey, we could get like 2, maybe 3 1 seeds. They were talking about how in the Final Four, or, Final Four, maybe you could be getting 2 or 3 teams in the Final Four from the Big Ten. People were really looking sky high, and then once they start beating up on each other,
right, teams start splitting home and homes.
So you don't have that clear favorite. Well,
right.
Indiana obviously is, but it hurts teams like Michigan State and Wisconsin, Michigan. A team that, like you said, has all the momentum is Ohio State, and I would look for them to play really well in Chicago.
Right. So so the bracket I pointed out who the first round winners will play in the second round. But Michigan State and whoever they play, either Iowa or Northwestern, will play the winner of Ohio State and either Purdue or Nebraska. And then the winner of Indiana, Illinois will play the winner of Wisconsin, Michigan. So if Michigan wants to get to that title game, they got to beat Indiana or Illinois, likely Indiana. And if Michigan State wants to get to that title game, you're going to have to beat probably Ohio State, likely.
It would be interesting if you had a Michigan State title game. And a team that I like, though, is I like Ohio State to maybe to win the whole thing in Chicago because of that momentum they have. Because I think when you look at like Indiana, yes, they're going to be playing for it, but they're still going to get the 1 seed, whether they they'll get like 1 win. And they're still going to go 1 seed unless they were maybe upset. But I think they have that secure, like in the bag. So they don't have as much to play for, per se, as the Buckeyes or the Spartans or the Wolverines. And I really like Ohio State to maybe win it all, and then they could possibly be looking at a 2 seed in the big tournament if you win the.
Yeah, I mean, if they were to win it all, you could get up maybe a lower 2 seed, and then you'd have the Spartans and the Wolverines probably as 3 seeds. And the Badgers of Wisconsin probably at a 4, maybe a high 5 seed in the tournament. So, I mean, it's going to be interesting. And, I mean, as far as predictions go, It's hard to predict sometimes because the teams. I mean, certain teams care more than others, and it's hard to predict. If I had to say, I'd probably say it's going to be Indiana, Michigan on one side of the bracket, and Ohio State, Michigan State on the other side. Like Tim said, Ohio State's kind of on a hot streak, so I'll say Ohio State, and maybe Indiana doesn't care that much. Michigan makes it, and Ohio State beats them.
That'd be exciting.
I mean, that's.
But those last the Final Four that you kind of laid out there for that, those are almost pick'em games. Based on what you've seen in these past 2 weeks.
Those both would be on Saturday. If you had an Indiana-Michigan matchup and an Ohio State-Michigan State matchup, that'd be a great Saturday in Chicago. Mm-hmm. And, to go with the other tournament matchups from the other tournaments around the league, especially the Big East in New York. And, tournament weekend's a lot of fun, and, it's coming up, and it should be good. So, but as you brought up a little bit earlier, there could be a Michigan-Michigan State matchup in the final, which I know last year was not a possibility.
Right.
And
they're both on the same side.
Right. And Michigan ended up losing a little bit early so that they couldn't play the Spartans, who ended up winning the whole thing. Mm-hmm. But this year, Michigan State could have that matchup. Mm-hmm. And as always, when the Spartans play the Wolverines, that would be a very big deal in these parts.
Oh, absolutely. Around here, and like you said, as always, it would be for these past 2 years. It hasn't always been a big matchup in basketball for Wolverine fans or even Spartan fans, but it really would, and especially given the 2 games. The first game you had State just mop the floor in East Lansing against Michigan, and then in the second game you had Michigan take a big lead. Like I said, not being able to finish there, and then they were ultimately their star guy Trey Burke, pickpockets Appling and seals the deal, and that was a great finish, but Michigan almost gave it away, and State finished on a 9-1 run before that breakaway dunk. So it would be interesting because when you look at both those games, it's almost a draw in that Michigan State. Going back to like the Oakland game against IPFW, that was probably the best game Michigan State played all year. They were shooting out of their minds. They were playing really well, and it's hard to replicate that. So and in Michigan that's not a fluke though, because they didn't play well. So you match up those two things, and there's a huge gap in the points margin. The second game, a much better game. State for some reason decided to jack up a ton of threes, and Michigan didn't hit 1 3, which was incredible. So this, if that were to happen, I think it'd be great, and it would kind of be, the
tiebreaker.
Exactly, your best of 3, and it would kind of maybe, especially on a neutral court, to maybe decide who is the better team this year.
Right. I mean, you have you split the season series. You both win at home. It's hard to tell, especially for the fans who. I mean, the players, it's like who's better, whatever. You just play the games. But for the fans, I mean, they care a lot, and they want to know who's better, and they want to see who has bragging rights. And right now, nobody really does. Right. I mean, are you going to talk about margin of victory? Like, are you really going to take it to that level?
I know that a certain fan base would probably say they lose in the Sweet 16. They would be able to hang their maize and blue caps on the fact that they maybe beat the Spartans, twice in 3 years. While on the other side, Spartan fans, even if they lost to Michigan, they would, if they make it to the Final Four, that's their expectation. I would believe.
Right. Yeah, I mean, if the Spartans were to go down to the Wolverines in the title game, and you still make the Final Four, Spartan fans, they move on.
Yeah, it's not even a wash. It's like we made it to the Final Four.
Right. Yeah, I mean, the Final Four is the end of bragging rights, or the end all be all. Mm-hmm. And so with Selection Sunday being this Sunday, it's an exciting time, and it's March Madness, and everybody's pumped up about it, and it's one of the best times in sports all year round.
Mm-hmm. And it'd be even more exciting especially if one, if not both, the teams end up at the Palace for all the local fans to go see.
Right, they'd be the second round technically, because the NCAA refers to the Dayton play-in games as the first round. But it's going to be fun, and like you said, the Spartans and Wolverines might both be in Auburn Hills, which is right here next to the Oakland Center in Auburn Hills, and it'd be a lot of fun. I'm sure there'd be a lot of Oakland people that end up heading over there just for kicks, because it's fun to watch basketball, and it's March, and it's gonna be a good time. So we're
Grizzly Head will be on the floor.
Yeah. Oakland sponsoring the floor at the Palace, and
sponsoring the whole thing. Absolutely, hosting it. It's a big deal.
So they can't be there. Oh wait, never mind.
Hey, Grizzly Head's on the floor.
That's
all
right.
that matters.
Yeah, and the O on one side and the Grizzly hit on the other one
Honor
for
the Pioneers.
Right, for the past Pioneers.
Absolutely.
We're going to go into our break now. We're going to come back with NFL free agency talk for the second half of the show. It's big time right now, so
Did you know the Lions are going to the Super Bowl?
We'll be back after this.